Darker than the blade, cups deeper in my kickstand, leaners in the misplaced creatures. I'm a fortified, a sanctum of force. Distort Morse code messages, ignore the reports. Where do we go?
I've got to say something about the issues that are going on. I think yesterday there was a whole heap of protests and, well, it's gone past protests. You educated me on this last time. A whole heap of riots in London, wasn't it?
Yep.
Different groups, far right and that, going to kick off about statues that may be removed and protect our statues and that. Just wanted to say on that. Like,
I just think, you know, it's all right. It's all well and good saying take the statues down and put them in a museum, right? But I have seen Night at the Museum. So what happens if them statues all come alive and you've got Hitler, Mussolini, Churchill, all them manned them?
all the man them together.
Wandering street, wandering road.
All the rock man them, isn't it? They're Parn Road.
You know, with Churchill going, oh, let's go this way, fight them on, and Hitler going, everybody, let's go this way. I don't know if that's how he spoke.
I don't know why, man, but that Churchill advert maybe, but I just get the feeling that you have to kind of, a little bit when you... You know what I mean?
But now, here you go. Right, let's do this then. So, Churchill, Prime Minister of England during the war, and they all loved him, the whole of England loved him, until the war was over, and then they said, who should we vote for as Prime Minister? Didn't choose him. So that's an interesting one. But the other thing here is, now this is my big thing.
So hold on. So did he do just one term then? I know that's not the English word.
There was a war cabinet. There was a wartime coalition cabinet kind of thing where they all pulled together. He became Prime Minister. Then after the war, they had an election to vote for Prime Minister they wanted, and they didn't want him. They brought him back, I think, in 1950 or something like that. But you have to understand that this man, he sent the troops in to shoot the Welsh miners. He sent them into Scotland to attack the working classes.
Newcastle too, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's responsible for the deaths of millions of Indians, apparently, with starvation and the rest of it. He gassed the Afghans, and they knew all this stuff at the time. And that's what we're going in 2020. Oh, he was terrible. What do you think if you went back in time and you stopped a man in the street and said, do you know what he's done? What he's done? Do you think they'd go, that's terrible? They'd go, yeah, we know. Don't care. And that's what we're forgetting now, right? Yeah, great. Let's take these statues down. But let's not forget why they was up there in the first place. And that's how the world was then. That is how it was
I've got to bring it back a little bit more recent. So when Boris come in, most recently, was it not like saying a whole heap of things that people weren't feeling? He tackled a ute playing rugby. Do you know what I mean? Like there's been a lot of things going on. Obviously, the history is written by the victor, right?
History is written by the victor.
Exactly.
That's
so
it.
We had, as you know, we're in a little group amongst us comedians, friends, like a little group. We could say what we want and that. And there was something I wrote kind of an essay on there this week, but just to bring out one of the highlights of what I was writing was, a lot of these statues are there, but we don't necessarily, the layman, me in school, for example, I didn't get taught some of the backgrounds to these people's behaviour, some of the things that we find unsavoury, some of the things we might find racist, some of the things that may hit us emotionally really deep, right? I didn't get taught any of those things. And I think that to sweep the statues into a museum, fair enough, but teach the youths as to why they went into a museum. Teach the youths as to why they wanted to pull down this statue in Bristol and what's behind it. And I spoke to someone and they commented to me that, I actually went to uni in Bristol and I didn't realise that this Colson guy was who he was. But now that explains to me why the Manic Street Preachers wouldn't play there, right? And I thought to myself, wow, that explains why the Manic Street Preachers didn't play. Do you know what I mean? But that's the reality of it, yeah?
Because people have known about this for a long, long time. And what you have to understand as well, a lot of these statues, they're built like 100 years later. They weren't built at the time. So that Colston one, they didn't that day go, oh, he's dead, let's put a statue to him. 100 years later, they sat down and said, we need to have someone represent our town. And there you go. But here's my thing. The guy was a slaver, and by today's standards, is an abomination of a human being, right? By any standards, is an abomination. But at the time, that's what they did. If in society people raped kids every day, that would be normal and acceptable. That's how it is. That's how it was. We can't then just go, so what are you going to do next? Pull down the Colosseum because of all the legacy of slavery? Where'd you end?
To me, teach people as to what happened in the Colosseum. Teach people how far we may have come. And another point to me is also teach. Look, when I was at school, I was never taught anything about a black civilization or person who had succeeded doing something. Do you understand how vague that statement is? Right?
But you went to school in a country whose history wasn't considered your history.
The history pushed to me wasn't anything to do with the backstory of my history.
No,
But
because
what I'm saying is, part of my history has been part of the makeup of the UK.
yeah, but if you went to Russia, do you think they'd teach you all about the slave trade? They wouldn't.
But I suppose through colonialism, if you went to the places where my parents were born, they probably wouldn't be teaching you about it either.
No, that's the whole point. It's all about being British. Where I went to school, I think I've told you this before. We didn't do English, history, and geography. We did humanities, right? In humanities, we did about the slave trade, and we would learn about what was going on in England for them to do that. But we had loony lefty teachers, as they was called then, right? When I then went and did O-levels, my O-level English, I didn't do Shakespeare. We did Maya Angelou, we did Chinua Achebe, done African writers, done Indian writers, because we was a very multicultural school, and we had these loony lefty teachers. When I then went to do A-level at another school, the teacher could not understand how I got a grade A at O-level without doing Shakespeare. Didn't do it. Or if we did look at Othello, we'd look at it from the point of view of humanities, about an African man who was a king, and how it was normal and acceptable back in them days to have African
Well, it's funny you say that. So I studied Othello, but didn't necessarily clock it in school that he was black. Right, that's one thing. That's probably my own fault for not taking any notice. Right,
Yeah.
but on another level, I wasn't even taught in school that like Egyptians were black. I wasn't even taught that. I wasn't even like. I mean, let me put that a different way. I wasn't even taught that Egyptians were not white Europeans. Do you understand what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is, that can have an effect on the person. It can make somebody lose drive. I'm not talking about myself now, but it can have. I'm sure it has had an effect on me to not see positive people or positive portrayals of people with similar skin color or cultural
Absolutely,
background.
I could see that. I could see that.
You spoke about it in one of the shows where you went back to you went to the Caribbean. There was a guy with you, mixed race brother, and he was really affected by the fact that there was people doing all kinds of jobs, policemen, this, all these different jobs, and they all had whether colour in their skin or the same cultural background, all season their food, wash their chicken. You know what I mean?
With vinegar. All right, let's just drop a bomb in here then. Let's do this, okay? So clearly, I hope in the time you've known me, I have established my knowledge of British history and Afro-Caribbean history and the slave trade and the impact of all of that and how we need to change all that. Could you or any white or black person, put your comments in the box if you will, explain to me why in 2020 you, Jonathan, are paying your tax to police, support and protect people who every year march to celebrate the slaughter of my people and their ascendancy over us.
And
every year.
And who are these people? You have to explain it a bit more.
But do you understand? The fact that you don't even know, and yet I, as a white British man, am meant to, quite rightly, embrace and understand your life, and yet you know nothing of ours. On the 12th of July, in the north of Ireland, the Protestants march to celebrate their ascendancy and dominance over the Catholic population.
Okay.
And I've told you so many times about proper racism exists between the Irish, right? And if you get a chance, go on YouTube. Phil Mitchell, what's his name? You know the guy I'm talking about.
Phil Mitchell? You mean Grant? Grant,
him, that one. Yeah,
Ross Kemp.
Ross Kemp, right, there you go. Ross Kemp, who's spent all these years developing a reputation as an investigative journalist, and I still know him as Phil Mitchell. Is a simple
Which is the wrong name as well.
Grant Mitchell. Go and watch his documentary that he did about police in North Ireland, and you'll see the hatred that exists there and still goes on there, right? Now, as a person of education, what I think is sad is that, whether I like it or not, that's Britain. It's not Ireland, it's Britain. Okay, legally, it's Britain. And therefore, those people in that part of Britain are British and want to be British, and yet we've decided on Brexit and they don't want it. So you go, hang on, you don't want them rules, but you want them rules. And it's like, if you're going to be British, you have to accept Brexit. But they don't want Brexit, but they still want to be British. By the same token, they can't understand that the Irish in the North Island don't want to be British, they want to be Irish. It's the most complicated part of the world, man.
For real. However, on that, I did see a programme talking about this. And I mean, there's certain parts where it's like people were throwing rocks over a wall, right? It's like proper close, you know what I mean? Proper segregated. But there were certain parts that I saw where kids were now starting to mix with people from the other side, like Catholics and Protestants, I think, right? Mixing together at school, or school were doing like things to bring people together and take people from one school to another. And them kids were admitting like, wow, I'd never known anyone from this side. Like, I'd never even spoken to them. To be honest, I wouldn't have done. But now I realise, actually, they're just the same as me. They just have different religious views or so on. But they saw these people as people.
Yeah. They look the same. They're all white. All white. They all... same haircut, same fashion, support the same teams. The only difference is that their God is the same God as ours, but when they go to church, their priest says this piece of bread represents Jesus, and when we go to church, this piece of bread is Jesus. That's more or less it. That's the biggest difference between the two communities. And then, you know what? None of them even go to church or believe in God.
But even there, right, it's in the kids, right? The kids... them kids that they're showing each other, for them kids to say, oh, we're all the same. Actually, I'd never have hung out with this person, but we're all the same. Then them kids are going to be the future, so they can teach their kids something. And that's what I think it is. It's in education. I think to see some of the issues in some of the poorer parts of the country, for whatever reason the poorer parts are, then to show those people in those poorer parts that some of the people who've succeeded in life that we know of weren't necessarily from the richest places. They didn't necessarily go to private schools. That you can achieve something despite your background. These things need to be taught, for me, in my opinion, in order to make change in the future. Yeah.
There's a book called The Black and Green, right? It's about the fight for civil rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. And it's interesting how they saw the parallels between the two communities. And I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting you to learn about it, but where was your people on the marching to support my people when we had the Birmingham Six and the Guildford Four and all the rest of it? Where were they?
For real, man, I don't know. I don't know.
But do you understand? But you shouldn't know. You shouldn't know because it's not your history. But you know what? That's Britain. That's part of Britain. And you're talking about teaching everyone else Afro-Caribbean history, but most people don't even know British history.
But what I'm saying to you is, I'm not talking Afro-Caribbean history, British. I'm talking the history is written by the victor, right? So we need to hear some of the side of the loser, so to speak. Right. Especially if those so-called non-victors live in our society. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Look, mate, it fascinates me so much that these Black Lives Matter guys that are marching and protesting, they are carrying out a long tradition in British history going back hundreds of years, right? Protests from the peasantry revolt upwards. So really what they're doing is very British. To go out on the street, march, protest and riot is very British. But part of the objection to them is, well, they're not British. But actually, well, they are, because what they're doing is what British people have done throughout time. You understand? Mm-hmm. That's why if you go around London, look how many army barracks there are all around London, like from Chelsea, Westminster, all them places, Greenwich, all them places. Because if it kicks off, they can get the military into town in minutes.
I never even thought about it like that.
But that's how it is, because we've got a history of protesting and all the rest of it. But what happens then is we'll go, you're not being patriotic. That's, when you teach people, when these, and I do feel, this is terrible, and even I'm thinking, how am I going to frame this? But when I saw those white guys protecting them statues yesterday, obviously I thought they were misguided idiots. But at the same time, I feel a bit of sympathy for them because they genuinely do not understand. They don't understand what's happened to what they consider to be their country, right? But it ain't their country, it's our country. It's our country. So when we go, right, I don't want my black friends mistreated and abused. I don't want my trans friends, my gay friends. I don't want anyone mistreated or abused. But these guys, they live up in the north of England or out in Essex, and they think England's a white country, always has been. No, it isn't, and no, it never was.
I'll be honest, the only thing I disagree with there is where they live, man, because they live everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's necessarily pockets, man. They live everywhere. They just express themselves when...
Swedes. Big Swedes.
They express themselves more when they're together, in it, really. But, it's a mad one, man. I struggle to talk about such things necessarily because it... I mean, I grew up in the 80s, man. There was a lot of these sorts of groups around in the 80s, and the reason why I struggle to talk about it isn't because of the pain necessarily that it causes me, but I don't want to give my energy to that. I don't want to give my energy to such a negative vibe. You understand what I'm saying? But
and you know what song came out? What song came out 39 years ago this week?
Go on.
Ghost Town.
Right.
The Specials. 39 years ago. This town is coming like a ghost town. And what's changed in 39 years? Nothing. It's got worse. And what I saw yesterday, two things I saw yesterday that did disturb me. Obviously, these white right-wing guys defending Churchill. Okay, that's their Churchill. Maybe they know that and maybe they don't care. But they're defending him and doing the Hitler salute. And you go, do you not understand? If you did love this man because he stood up to fascism, you doing the Hitler salute, that's like the biggest insult to the man. That's more of an insult than people trying to tear down his statue.
And this is it. As again, we spoke of it before. People don't wish necessarily to go and text them to digest it themselves to understand how they feel about it. It could just be a call to arms, isn't it? Like, right, we're going to all go do this thing.
It's our country, do we want? And the other thing that did disturb me even more than that. So there's Sky News, they're interviewing this mixed race girl and this white woman, and they're talking about young people and they're not putting up with it. And I think, you know what, I've got a lot of respect for young people taking to the streets and marching, but let's also teach these young people to vote, okay? But the white woman's going, yeah, it's disgusting, Black Lives Matter, I don't want to live in a racist country. And I thought, you know what, yeah, I'm with you on that. And she said, because her daughter, who's white, she's got friends, and she wants her daughter to know that everybody's equal. And I thought, that's really good. And she goes, and then it's all part of the bigger picture of globalization, capitalism, homophobia, blah, 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 blah. And you go, hang on, and whoa. Of course it is. But this black girl sitting next to you thinks your ass is there next to her supporting Black Lives Matter, but actually you're using her to push another agenda. And that's what I just thought. Well,
I'll be honest, I don't know how I take that one, because for me, man, the world, I'm a scientist, yeah? If you leave something, like you put on a reaction or whatever, every single reaction is trying to look for a thing called equilibrium, right? So like, if you start off with something, let's say water and salt, yeah, and you mix those two things together, they're going to try and find a place where as much water is diluted in the salt as possible. And do you know what I mean? They're looking for equilibrium, yeah? It's like that 0 point. Friend of mine, big up Scott, living in Australia. He's been watching the vlog a lot, so big respect, big shout goes out to you. He surfs, and he says that when he's surfing and he's in the tube, you know, like when the water's going over him and he's in the tube, in the wave, right? What is in front of him, there's nothing in front of him because that hasn't been created yet. What is behind him has already been destroyed. And what he is riding in is that like 0 point, innit?
And you know what? That's why them fools get hit by sharks. Stop. Don't be businessing what's ahead and behind and all this physical. Look for sharks, mate. Look around you. Look for the fin. All right? Now, Jonathan has kindly pointed out to you, when you get salt and water, you get sharks and salt water. That's where it's going wrong, mate.
But this is it, right? To me, you can't necessarily separate everything so much because it is a oneness. It is a oneness. You understand what I mean? Like, so, the world, the planet, we saw last year all the fires going on in America and California, and I've got a lot of friends there. Really worrying time. We saw a lot of fires going on in Australia, all over the world. Like, the planet is stressed because of the problems that the human race have done to the planet. Yeah, the problems that we have caused in swaying that balance and taking it further from equilibrium. If equilibrium was here, we're like pushing it. Whether burning fossil fuels, whether the planet heating up too much, whether eating too much meat, all of these things have an effect. And whether people like it or not, human race is a race. Despite of your skin colour, yeah, we all need to come together and try and deal with it. And all this segregation to me seems to be like foolishness, because it's like...
It's needed. You have to have segregation to divide people up, to stop them going for their common enemy. Was it 80 people own 80% of the wealth of the world? How does that work?
Yeah.
How does that? But meantime, we're just arguing with each other because of melanin. And I ain't got them. Mine is gone. So, I mean, I'm the future, mate. I'm the superior being.
You're the future
But
if it's dark outside all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Sunshine. If it was night time more often, man, I would run this place. I should live in like Norway,
Iceland,
top of
innit?
Norway.
Iceland.
For 6 months.